On the next episode of Painting and Travel, the Bansemers visit the mountains of Tennessee. Sarah explores a riverbank and covered bridge, while Roger sets up his easel to capture the distant mountains and last remnants of the fall leaves.
Today, Sarah and I are in Tennessee among these beautiful mountains. We're not too far from Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. We've discovered these small roads here, and I'd like to paint this scene on an 11 by 14 inch piece of masonite, which is covered with gesso. I really like this scene because the mountains are just so very blue out there. And it's a nice contrast between those blue mountains. We have some beautiful clouds and the stark contrast between those mountains and those trees. Now it's fall now, the leaves have fallen on most of the trees, but we do have a hint of color among the mountains and among these leaves here. We have a creek right over here on the other side of the street, and there's a nice covered bridge down there with some beautiful rocks and water flowing over them.
Nick, our new little rescue dog, and I decided to explore the creek here at Emerts Cove. This great-looking covered wooden bridge is named in honor of Frederick Emert, who settled here with his family in 1790, and we had to cross through it to get over to the side with easy river access so we could play. Mick wasn't scared at all. He pranced right through and fully enjoyed it. The bridge spans the waters of the Middle Prong on the Little Pigeon River, which was designated as an outstanding national resource water by the state of Tennessee. And in the spring of 2000, the historical bridge was reconstructed for the town of Pittman Center in its continuing effort to provide improvements within the town that further its vision to carefully support tourist development that honors this beautiful place, thanks to the efforts of some foresighted individuals. Heading down the bank, I hear the noisy water, and I can't wait to see Mick's reaction to this new-to-him environment. What Mick found educational was trying to bound over the smooth, round creek river boulders on his willing but short legs to get his first drink of cool, clear running water. I noticed a very happy waggy tail. Your dog will let you know immediately what he thinks about a place without reservation, and this exuberant little guy is fun to travel with. I was very surprised he waded in. Maybe there is some lab in him along with the Dachshund and Terrier. We had fun playing creekside, splashing, picking up stones and leaves while listening to the creek. Mick found it an interesting experience to be able to walk over the water he had just tasted. For him, it was an energy drink. No extra caffeine required. I love the bright fall leaves with deep shades of red that are unforgettable and make this fall spectacular. Mick and I also love these plein air afternoons with Roger, so let's go see how his painting is coming along.
On my palette, I have titanium white, alizarin crimson, Indian yellow, and ultramarine blue, the three primary colors, and these are transparent colors. And of course the white is an opaque color. Oh, I think I'll start with the mountain. It's very blue today, and as I squint at it, I think it's about a middle tone blue. In other words, it's about halfway between black and white. Now this is a glass palette, but one reason I have this gray behind that is to give me an indication of what is middle tone, right between, half between white and black. So if I think that mountain is middle tone, I can put my color on here, squint my eyes a bit, and I can tell whether this is a middle tone gray. Now if I took and change this into a black and white picture, this will be about the same value as this. So I'll start painting by putting in this mountain with this middle tone blue. Now I've sketched this earlier with charcoal just to get a little head start on this. And I use charcoal, it just makes it very quick, and I can make the dark and the light patterns, and I can see what my composition can be. I can wipe this off just some. It really won't interfere with the acrylic paints, but I can still see that. I think I'll use mostly vertical strokes on this mountain here. And it's so far in the distance, I don't see any real color changes with the mountain. So I'm going to make this just that solid color of blue. I have my atomizer here. This is very important. This helps to keep my paint wet and helps to keep this wet just a moment or two longer on my board. Well, since I have this light blue color out, I think I'll add more white to this, and I'll gray this because we have some nice gray clouds up there. So with my three colors, I can make a gray color, and I can mix a lot of this paint right on the board as I go. Now I'm going to lose this tree in all those details, but that won't matter. I've established my composition in my head, and I've put it here so I can remember where all it's going to go. I'm going to apply this paint in the sky rather thick for a couple reasons. Light passages of paint should always have a little bit more weight. They should always be thicker than thin passages of paint. So my dark areas can be applied thinly, but the light areas helps when the paint is applied thicker. It makes the painting look a little better. And also the second reason is I want to have enough paint on here so it doesn't dry almost instantly. And that way I can blend some of these clouds into this area here. I don't have much time at all when I apply this because this does dry so fast, especially since I'm standing here in this brutal sun. There, we'll try to give that sort of a little ragged edge. Don't want to give it too much of a ragged edge because the distant mountains are very far away, but I do want that edge to appear a bit soft. The lighter part of those clouds is a warmer color. So I'll put some Indian yellow in here, make it somewhat lighter, and we'll apply a few clouds in here. These are going to be moving, of course, all the time, just from moment to moment. So it doesn't really matter where I put the pattern of these clouds as long as it looks good on the painting. A few more right down here. Now, clouds do have perspective on them. So these clouds up here are larger, they're puffier. As they go in the distance, they get smaller. So I have to keep that in mind. So the clouds in this area will be larger than the clouds back here. As we go back, I'll kind of flatten those out, make those somewhat smaller. Okay, we got that. Now let's proceed with the middle ground here. And I can take my three colors, just really put them on my brush, just those three colors, just like that. And as I apply those three colors without mixing them here on my palette, I can put those in there and I get a real fall color look, which is what I'm after here. I'm going to start with these very dark colors, and eventually I'll put some white in these as well, but I want to have this dark color as a base. Here we have a very dark line of shrubs right at the edge of the field, so I'll add more blue to that. I do have one more mountain back here, and I think maybe I'll place that in there right now before I put in too much more of the trees down here. And it's in the distance, but I do see some color in there. So I'll make sort of a warm green, and I'll take this mountain there. Let me see, I think I'll make that even warmer. Here, I don't want it too much darker than this mountain, a little bit darker, but not much. So I'm trying to get this value slightly darker than this value, and of course a little more brilliant. I think that should do it as far as the value goes. I'm not sure about the color yet. I might have to change that later. There, now we've got all the layers. We've got the sky, we've got the distant mountain. This mountain here comes a little bit forward, and as these trees and shrubs and things come forward, they get more contrast and there's more color in them. There's a lot of rich, dark colors. Here, we'll just go back into these three colors without mixing them very much. We have a mountain right over here to the left, a large mountain coming down right into this painting. So that will have a lot of color. Since it's close up, we can see much more of the color. It doesn't blend into the atmosphere like this mountain does. The farther it goes back, the more atmosphere is between us and that mountain. And what makes that blue is really just the sky and all the atmosphere between us and that mountain. There, that's sort of feeling like some fall colors right in here. What I have going right now is just big blocky areas, and once I get those established, then I can build upon those, and that way I can put in later on more of the details. But I have to get these big areas established right off the bat. I don't like to leave any one area of the canvas blank, so the next step would be to put in this foreground. Ultramarine blue, yellow, we'll put some white in there too, and I'm going to make this darker to begin with. This grass is going to be much lighter in the finished painting, but I want to work some lights over some darks. Well, this is good. This is always a good place to be in a painting, to get everything covered. If the values aren't right at this point, I can pretty much tell what needs to be adjusted, but I think my values are okay, so I can continue building on what I have, knowing that the foundation of the painting is fairly correct. Put that in very quickly here, just with the edge of my brush, and add some lighter colors to these trees back there. And the reason I want to do that is because the tree trunks back there are very dark. So if I can't have too much of this dark foliage here and still expect to put a dark tree trunk over it. I need some contrast, so I'm going to make some of these trees lighter, because right in here is where this tree that's lost most of its leaves is going to jut way up into the painting here. So in some aspects, I'm still working on the basic foundation of the painting. It won't really start to come together until I put those beautiful trunks of the tree in. I'm going to put out one more color, and that's cadmium yellow light. This is an opaque color. I often put out these two yellows, and this will give me a very rich, brilliant green. This green is dry down here, so I'll be able to go over that area with this beautiful green grass. And we have some fall leaves up here. And we have some leaves that are catching the sun right in here. These lighter passages will let me put in those dark tree trunks. Seeing this so dark right down here is sort of throwing off my thinking as to some of these values and colors. So I'm going to apply some of these lighter greens down here now. With the cadmium yellow light, ultramarine blue, you see that makes a very rich, brilliant green. I'm going to spray my board. The wind is just carrying that away. I'm going to use my fan brush to put in this grass. I'll just apply this a bit thin so some of these dark colors will show through. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to flatten out some of these greens. Those look pretty brilliant right now, maybe too much. I may have to cut those down. I don't want them to fight with the beauty of this blue mountain back here. I don't want them to be in competition, so I may have to gray those. Right here on the top of this hedgerow, we have a different kind of green. It's a very warm green. This is a very cool green here, and right in here we have a very warm green, so I'm going to mix more blue with it right in there. Just a different kind of foliage gives a much different look. There, as you can see, this is warmer, that's much cooler. It's kind of subtle, but sometimes it's really hard to tell what is warm and what is cool. It's all the colors out here in nature, as beautiful and as brilliant as they sometimes appear, more often than not, the colors are very subtle. And it's often hard to tell what color to mix. But I can say one thing, that the comparison between one color and another color on the canvas is the important thing. Just by itself, the warm and cool doesn't really mean that much until you compare it with another color. So compare this with this color and you can see the difference of warm and cool. Here we also have a nice set of bushes and trees here, and these are tending to be cool. One reason these are cooler always is because these are catching more light from the sky. This grass here is catching more light from the sun. The sun is coming right down and hitting that and reflecting. So the sun is warm, so it's going to give you a warm color. Here, we're looking at the side of it, so more of the light from the sky is penetrating that. And that's one reason this is cooler than this grass. All right, I'm adding more color to this as I go, just more variations here and there. Well, I think it's time for me to start placing some of the trunks to these large trees. So I'll take a small brush and I'll mix my 3 colors here, red, yellow, and blue. I'll make a very dark color. I'll put more blue in it than anything, so it will be a cool color. Okay, I've got this dark color, and I've loaded my brush up with this paint. It's thin, so it should flow off the edge of this brush, and just drag it down. This sort of holding it this way kind of gives me a bit of a ragged edge, and I can hold it this way too. It really doesn't. It's really a matter of choice. Now, there's nothing very attractive about a dead tree. Well, I shouldn't say that. Sometimes there is, but generally speaking, dead trees don't make very good paintings. Something with a little more life in it, I think, is better. So we'll start out with this, what looks like a dead tree, and then we'll put some foliage up here. Now, often when I paint trees, I'll start to put in the foliage first and then put in the trunk. But there's so little foliage on that, I think I'm going to work this way here and put in these bare limbs first. Now, I might not want to put in all of these. This is a good area to work on in the studio, so I may leave some of these just as suggestions here. Sometimes I put my one hand over the other, and that can help steady my brush. Now, these tree trunks down in here, they can go behind some of this foliage, so we can see those in here, and then they can disappear, and then maybe they can appear again. So they'll be hidden by some of the bushes and shrubs in the front. This is where a good brush is essential. I can't use an old brush to do this. I have to have a brush with a good point. So I try and always keep at least 1 or 2 nice, pristine brushes with me for details. Since I made this lighter here, these tree trunks can show up. Okay, I'll let those sit there a moment. We'll go back to the fan brush and we'll work on this foreground and lighten this up even more. So with a cadmium yellow light, ultramarine blue, this is totally dry. Spray that with some water and lighten this once again. And right back here, I think I want this to be very flat. Since it's in the distance, I won't see the texture of the grass as much. This tends to really fight with these dark areas, so I'm going to gray this down. I'm going to put my other colors in here to make a sort of a gray color. Still green, but it's not the brilliant green that I might have up here in the foreground. The fan brush, I can just flick some weeds and things from the bottom, flick them up. And I'll do the same right in here. Now in the foreground, I am going to add more color. So right in here, we'll put in that yellow. And I'll try and leave as much texture as I can in this area, because in the foreground, these colors will be more intense. So it'll be more intense here and less intense here. I'm going to work with a few negative areas now. I always love working with negative areas. It's just fun. So let's start here. I'll put a few negative areas in this mountain and a few right in here on this tree. So I'll mix up the color again of our distant mountain. Try and get it close to what it is. Another nice thing about having this palette so close to my painting, I can mix my colors here and I can easily see whether it's the right color, because my eye can see both of these at the same time. If I had my palette down here, it would be much harder to judge whether I had the right color or not. So I always like to have my palette close to where I'm painting. And I might want to see the trunk of this tree right here. So I'll put in a negative area on this side. I'll put one in on that side. And now you can see there's possibly a trunk right in the middle. And adding these negative areas right here can help describe these branches and trunks. I can just place some negative areas right between those trunks. It'll help those show up better. Now let's go over to this mountain here on my far left, and I'll put a few negative areas in here. So the mountain comes down, dips down here, but this will all be trees, so I can't go down too far. Just a few spots here and there. I can work both ways with these negative areas. I can, of course, put in the negative areas like I'm doing now, but then, of course, I can always put in more colors on top of these. So it's kind of a back and forth situation. Put some negative areas in. If they don't look quite right, I'll just put those greens over it again. Negative areas do tend to make the painting come to life, though, I do think. And it gives it a painterly look. As I look at these trees here in the distance, they all very, very dark because I'm kind of looking into the sunlight, so they're backlit. So I'm not seeing a lot of color up in here now. So I'm going to take my fan brush, I'm going to spray that, get it wet. If I apply some of these paints right here, the water will help that paint sort of flow out just a bit. And that way, it can express some foliage without getting too chunky in there with the colors and the paint. Now that I'm putting in some of this foliage, these tree trunks don't look quite so awkward as they did to begin with. I'm jumping around on this painting because I want to work the whole thing at once. I'm going to lighten this area back here one more time. Put a patch of sunlight coming through there. We've got clouds coming over all the time, so we do get nice patches of sunlight here and there. I'll mix more yellow with this to make it more intense. And maybe I'll spray this. And maybe I'll put another patch of sunlight coming across the field here. Just using the edge of my brush. This will ruin a brush pretty quickly, but that's what they're for. That makes that look a little better. It breaks up that long horizontal line. Now it's really a matter of just tidying up details here. I'm going to put in some fairly brilliant colors because I do see some fall leaves over there. So I'll just dab in some of these reds and yellows. I'm going to put out one more color. That's cadmium red light. So now I have 2 reds and 2 yellows. Don't need much of this cadmium red light, but this is an opaque color, and I want to put in a few more brilliant patches of these fall leaves. I don't see them a whole lot right here, but they're all around us. So I think I would like to add a few of them here. So I'm just touching my board with just some small strokes to get these in here. One area that might be good to add some of this color is right down by the base of this trunk. This will make this tree trunk stand out. This has been a beautiful morning, sitting watching this mountain, and the light changed. The light changes so quickly, it's almost a different scene than one I started with. I'm going to take some photographs now. We'll take this back into the studio and put some finishing touches on it there. Here in the studio, not a lot of things had to be done to this painting, but here's what I did. I added more limbs and branches to these trees. And here I added more color to the foliage. As the leaves were changing in North Carolina, I had done some other paintings of the fall leaves. So I used those as reference to add a bit more color in here to these trees. As I was adding these highlights back in here, I really felt like there was something missing from this painting. It needed a little more life. So I decided to put some of these cows in here. This really changes the complexion of the whole painting, but I like the idea of having a few animals in here, and I've done this with many of my other paintings. I added a lighter blue color right here at the base of this mountain, sort of to give it a misty look. Sarah and I enjoy traveling around Tennessee, and especially in the mountains. Well, I think that's going to finish this painting, so we'll put a frame on it and we'll take one last final look.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.